Hello, I'm Salman Feinberg, a merchant of Raseiniai First Guild. I'm a resident of Kaunas, though I travel throughout the Kaunas Governorate for business purposes. I inherited the spirit of entrepreneurship from my father, Israel Feinberg. Me and my brother Abel have achieved a successful expansion of our businesses, and we can proudly boast to be the owners of splendid real estate. Though Russians always view Jewish merchants with distrust, I have something to brag about. The governor of Kaunas himself resides in my former house. What a good investment it was. But the story of the house begins with one enterprising woman, Miss Flora Czechaviczynia, a resident of Kaunas and a wife of a collegiate assessor, decided to invest her inherited fortune and was looking for a proper land lot in Kaunas. Her attention was drawn by the empty lands at the intersection between the new town and the old town, which at the time belonged to the Dominican monastery and were used as vegetable gardens. In 1844, Miss Czechaviczynia and the monastery signed a land rent agreement. Though at that time the land lot was situated in the area which was considered a periphery, close to the town's border, behind which there was a cemetery, wetlands, and forest, an important element of infrastructure, the road from St. Petersburg to Warsaw, ran in the vicinity. In 1845, when Nikolai I, Emperor of Russia, ordered to close Catholic monasteries in which the number of friars was too low, the Dominican monastery suffered the same fate. Consequently, the land lot, which had previously been owned by the Dominicans and rented by Miss Czechaviczynia, became the property of Kaunas. At first, the land lot was empty, but in 1846, Miss Czechaviczynia applied to the city's architect, Fyodor Winter, for a house project, and 2 years later, a brick house with a gable roof, rectangular plan, and symmetrical composition was built in the rented land lot. Unfortunately, the owner passed away, and her son, who inherited her fortune, decided to sell the building to another wealthy lady, Franciszka Bielozierskinia. The new owner expanded the facade volume by adding an avant-corps to each side. Additional buildings were also constructed near the main house, a stable, a carriage house, and storehouses. Nobody knows why, but Miss Bielozierskinia decided to sell this property. I did not miss an excellent opportunity to acquire such a promising property. As I was the new owner of the residence, the city board also gave me the land lot under an open-term rent contract. Due to the city's expansion eastwards, the land lot was already positioned in an excellent location. The garden, which was laid out in front of the residence from Peterburgskaya, now Vilnius Street, formed a separate land lot known as the Fair Square, which was supposed to be used for public purposes. I applied to the city board, asking to join the square to my land lot. The city administration satisfied my request, but I was obliged to establish a nice garden for public use. I'm proud that my well-organized land lot remained unchanged for over a century. How did a residential house turn into the seat of a governmental institution? It was in 1843 when the Kaunas Governorate was established, and a residence suitable for the governor, who was appointed by the Russian emperor, was required during his stay in Kaunas. As there was a shortage of representative buildings in Kaunas, 9 governors worked in rented premises, which were not suitable for their work. In 1866, Governor Alexei Kaznacheyev was the first lucky man to whom I gave the keys of the palace, rented as the governor's residence. However, my house could not accommodate the whole governor's chancery, so the western part of the land plot was extended, with a new wing and a stable coach house, intended for that matter. The governor's chancery was set up on the second floor above the stable coach house. The new wing also accommodated a kitchen and the living rooms of a chef, a footman, and other servants. After these buildings were constructed, the western part of the land lot up to Vilkomirskaya now Šventos Gertrūdos, street was fully built up. The garden facing the building was open to the public. Hence, a smaller park suited for the governor and his family and not accessible to casual passerby had to be designed in the inner courtyard. The inner courtyard was perfectly set up. The pathways dividing the garden into identical squares led to a round-shaped flower garden with an antique marble woman's sculpture in the center. After the house became the governor's residence, the whole land lot was enclosed by a wooden fence. 2 entrance gates were installed, one from Peterburgskaya Street and another from Vilkomirskaya Street. The entrance facing Peterburgskaya Street also featured a central circular driveway and pebble pathways. 3 round-shaped flower gardens were designed nearby. My investment in the environment and the building's modern and luxurious equipment paid off very soon. 10 years later, after the period of rent expired, the Russian imperial administration decided to buy the buildings. Until 1915, 14 governors worked in the palace purchased for 35,000 silver rubles. The last governor to reside in the palace, Nikolai Gryazev, withdrew from Kaunas in May of 1915 due to the outbreak of World War I. Each of the 2 floors of the building had 11 rooms. There was a parquet floor and Dutch white tile stoves. Massive gilded mirrors were brought from the Russian Empire. They adorned the stairway, the meeting hall, and fireplaces. New luxurious furniture and chandeliers were purchased as well. Walls were decorated by the portraits of Russian emperors and empresses, painted by the 19th century artists, as well as the landscapes of provincial towns and the icons of saints. The building was equipped with cutting-edge utilities, electricity, telephone line, and water closets. Such representative premises were required when the Russian emperor's family members would come to Kaunas on their way to Western Europe. The governor's palace was immortalized in the lithographs and photographs of that time. We can also see how the interiors looked like in several surviving paintings of Mariana von Verjovkin, a world-renowned artist and sister of Governor Pyotr Verjovkin, which were painted on her stay in her brother's residence. Today, massive gilded mirrors decorating the stairway and a table with an armchair standing in the room, which was once used by a duty officer, take visitors down memory lane to the times of governors. The volume and decoration of the palace facade have also remained little changed since the 19th century.